All right, Parul, let's start.
Yeah. Okay. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Just few logistic issues. If you have any questions, you can always put it on the chat. You can also raise your hand. We can pause and take the questions. We'll also have some time towards the end of the presentation where you can ask specific questions. So me and Sangeeta together are Teachers Collective. Personally, I did my master's in child psychology and neurological disabilities with specialization in learning disabilities from Spastic Society, Mumbai. I've been actively working in this field for last 20 years. I'm an RCI certified special educator, full-time, passionately, working with kids. We thrive working with kids. So that's where our learning comes from and our knowledge comes from. So there will be a lot of things which you already aware of. So we will go a little faster in those slides, and we'll take more time in understanding and how you can engage with a child with learning difficulty at home would be the more, the focus of today's presentation. So if you have any question at any point of time, please feel free to drop in a chat in the chat box, or you can pause and ask questions. So our agenda is something that you can experience, try it yourself. Dyslexia post Tare Zameen Pe, because I think that's one movie which opened eyes for all of us that there is something like that exists, and identifying the areas of assistance where we can pitch in as parents, even as special educators. What are the different other things we can try? Understand that dyslexia is part of a learning disability. It's a spectrum ranging from mild, moderate to severe, and it's not only about reading and spelling. Some practical solutions that can be done at home. Sometimes it's in front of our eyes, but we have not given it much attention. A few strategies that you can try straight away, and a couple of hands-on activity that you must try with your child with students at school will help you like a kind of breakthrough that you are looking at. Sangeeta, you want to talk about this? Everyone is gifted. Of us take longer to open our gifts. Truly believe it. So this is one of the award-winning author.
Yeah, Patricia Polacco is an author who herself is dyslexic. She's written a lovely book, which will be good for, say, it was about her grade 4 experience. So anything grade 4 and up, probably. And if you're reading out aloud, obviously earlier than that, it's called Thank You, Mr. Faulkner. And it talks about how a teacher actually helped her open up. See, what happens is parents is we do a lot at home. But if a teacher is going to say something in the classroom and actually work with them, or for this child to understand that others are going through it in a classroom setting, that's like a really good door for us to open. So instead of making it about ourselves as parents, can we show them that other children have done, this is how the teacher worked, and have them take away ideas from that? So please write this down. Thank You, Mr. Faulkner by Patricia Polacco is a very good book for children to understand that there are others, and it's a condition and it's not a problem.
Yeah. So if you look at the screen, first stop is like, what is dyslexia? Something that's not new, but there are certain components of the definition that needs to be spelled out and needs to, have more of our attention, that it is a neurobiological condition. It is a difficulty in recognizing words, decoding spelling. So decoding is a very commonly used term, but in a layman term, decoding means when you read something and you understand what that word means. So you decode what is CAT, and when you're reading CAT, okay, it is cat and cat means this. And despite a good classroom intervention and unexpected given other abilities, secondary difficulties in reading comprehension, vocabulary development, and background knowledge. So when we say reading comprehension, if I read a sentence, can I understand what I read? And can I associate that to my previous knowledge? So maybe an experience, so say outing to the beach. And can the child relate, oh yeah, last year we went on a holiday and we went on the beach and we did all these activities. So if you look at the screen, these are all letters and alphabets, everything is dancing. This is how the presentation for a child with dyslexia looks like. So every time you present a material, the way child perceives it and sees it is totally different. So every time it's a new experience. For some children, it is so as I said, it's a spectrum. So when they are at the lower end of the spectrum, it's not so bad. It would be just like difficulty in phonological awareness. Once you give them intervention, they kind of understand the pattern and they work through the pattern. When you go to the moderate and the severe cases, every time, so there are, as we go along the PowerPoint, we'll also see that there are a lot of types of dyslexia. And in that types, you will see where those children kind of fit in. And so it's not only about reading, spelling, and comprehension, but it's about your space. It's about the world around you. It's about the movement. It's about your spatial judgment and all. So when I look at my child, is all children who have difficulty in learning language, reading, are children with dyslexia? The answer would be no. So as a child, is your child a reluctant reader, doesn't pick up a book easily? All difficulties in reading need not be dyslexia. Dyslexia is one's internal reason, that's all. So other difficulties that exist, as we said, comprehension. So there is lot of, so another question a lot of time parents ask is, when I read, my child answers the questions, but when we give the text for the child to read, the child is not able to so is it my child dyslexic? So as we go along, we'll answer a couple of these questions as well. So these are the success stories. So 1 out of 20 people are dyslexic. It's not related to, or stops at any background, economic or intellectual abilities. Talented and creative in several ways. So if they might not be good at reading and writing, but they might be talented in other, we just have to identify and work with their strengths. Now, a lot of times we don't share much of these success stories with kids, and we don't make them understand that it's just the way your brain is different and how you work with that brain. So that's one thing we always tell parents, that do share success stories, have these kind of table discussions where you tell children that you are just the same. It's just the way you look at things, the way you perceive things, the way your brain works is different from any other child. So you work with the child's strength and kind of strengthen their strengths along with their consistent interventions. Because a lot of time when these children are given support at school, there is a lot of reluctance to come to the table because they think, why am I different? I'm not different. I'm just the same. So if these conversations, when initiated at home, given that confidence that yes, you can do it, will help even the people at school working with the children. Now, if you look at dyslexia as a spectrum of difficulties, it's not only about reading and spelling, but it's also motor. And when we say motor, it's your fine motor, which is your handwriting difficulties, the legibility part of it. So there are a lot of children who have difficulty in holding the pencil. So usually we suggest that try to use grippers, have a triangular pencils, have pens which have a pad in front. All these strategies help them to have a better grip and helps them with their handwriting and the legibility part of it. When you look at memory deficits, you teach something and next day you realize that there is not much retrieval that has happened. They tend to forget. So we are not saying that it need to be rote learn, but it needs to be practiced. It needs to be presented in different modalities like kinesthetic, like tactile, auditory, visual, all those. And how you teach them when you are doing memory activities, mnemonics is one of the good strategies that can also help children remember certain concepts. When I talk about spatial, so if I have a ball and I throw the ball, at what distance, at what speed the ball will come to me is also, sometimes these children find it difficult to gaze. Or when I'm climbing up the stairs, when I'm climbing down the stairs, their difficulty to gaze how much, what's the depth of the steps, how much I need to place my foot is also left, right, directionality is something which is a challenge. When we say listening, the discrimination. So when I say, when you are doing phonics, you break down the alphabets. So putting them together, blending them together is something that they struggle with. So these are the spectrum of difficulties. It could be present in combination. It could be a standalone. but usually it is a combination of 2 to 3 difficulties that we see in most of the kids having dyslexia. Now, this symptoms are only for for parents to look out for. And once you have identified that, most of the time, so when we see, when as parents we observe our kids, we don't see it as one-off instance, but we see how many times, how often my child forgets any information, has difficulty in directions, have difficulty in, when I say wear your shoes, has difficulty in left and right. When we sit down to study, has lot of reluctance in writing. And if I give, how will I know that whether it's my inability to write or it's my motor part of it? So when I give a laptop or a screen, is the child able to type it out and is happy doing that, versus when I give a pencil or a pen and has difficulty doing that? When I'm giving any instructions, long instructions take longer time for him or her to process, versus my small short instructions. So based on the data that you collect is when you decide, yes, there is a difficulty, we need to now go and seek for an outside help. So we are not talking about getting diagnosed, but we are talking of being aware that these are my child's difficulty, work through it, and then see if we can, if you think that even with intervention, even with consciously being aware of the difficulties, your child need little bit more extra help, is when we go. Usually if we send children for diagnosis, it's only after 7 or 8 years, and we give them that flexibility, that maturation, that chronology to, to, for them, we take it as a developmental part and let the children grow, and then see if they need to be sent for diagnosis or outside evaluation. So one of the tests, which is an indicator of dyslexia, is psychoeducational assessment, which is done by clinical psychologists to determine the learning difficulty. Now, when we look at dyslexia, Sangi, can you zoom in the image? So when we look at dyslexia,
this is maximum power.
Okay.
Sorry.
So when we look at dyslexia, like we talked about memory, we talked about directions, we talked about sequence, we talked about reading, writing, spelling. If I have to categorize as spectrum, then it would be phonological, which is your ability to blend sounds together. So when I say cat and the child says k at and says k at is cat, b at is bat, is your phonological dyslexia. So these children will indicate difficulty in blending the sounds together and make meaning out of words. When I talk about rapid naming deficits, is the automatic part of spelling. So if I see THE is the, or when I say IS and I see is, it should be automatic that it's is. So they have difficulty in rapidly naming, or that automatic behavior or automatic learning has not, it's not there. Surface dyslexia is something like, for example, if the word is debt, so they don't get it as DEBT is debt, but they will not have difficulty in saying, okay, I know that this is bet. So they'll give you the spelling BET. So debt and bet. So that's called the surface dyslexia. And then, of course, the visual dyslexia. Every time when I see the word, the presentation changes, the orientation changes. So if I give the child spelling, there would be 4 or 5 different patterns of spelling on the same page. And double deficits is when it's in the combination with 1 or 2 dyslexias, the types of dyslexias. So a child might have 1 or 2 or a combination. Now, there are lots of myths and facts around dyslexia. Myths being, a lot of these kids at school are labeled as that they're lazy, doesn't want to do, is very reluctant, doesn't take feedback. Even if I try to hold his hand, doesn't want to write, doesn't want to follow instructions, want to work alone. So they have attitude. So these are all vocabulary that over the period of time we have found, teachers knowingly or unknowingly using it. Sometimes even siblings use it. Sometimes friends use it. Oh, I try to help, but he is always lazy. He doesn't want to open his book also. Now, another myth is that it's curable. A lot of people think if we do 1 year of special ed, if we do like, few sessions of OT, few sessions of speech therapy, this is curable. It could be because he has a poor eyesight or a poor vision, and kids outgrow it. I had it. I had it when I was growing up. Nobody knew at that time what dyslexia was, and we managed. And now we are managing it in our workplace. We are doing pretty well. So I think my child will also outgrow it. But if you look at it, it's something which is neurobiological, is in nature. It's also caused by trauma and injury to the brain, any damage to the brain, lack of oxygen. Those kids are susceptible to have dyslexia. It is copable. So this is something that we need to understand, that it's not a condition that can be treated. It is that can be cured, but it can definitely be coped with or can be treated. It's a condition. Is it because of the poor eyesight? No. Does it change? It change because kids learn how to adapt to their environment, and they work on the adequate skills which help them to manage well along with their difficulty. So they figure out. So they learn that if I can't do this, I can might as well do that. And then they know that the different coping mechanisms that come across with that. And there are different accommodations which we'll talk about. So this was about, now what are the typical errors? So we are not putting here the obvious examples of reversals that you would associate dyslexia with. So if there is a reversal of B and D, or if there is a reversal of sometimes P and D, so is sometimes J, the way they write the J. So if it's going left or going right, but it's about some typical errors which you will figure out by looking at the work, is the shape. So when I look at trail versus trial, from, form, so it's just how the word looks like. So the minute the child sees TR, the child will predict it's a tree, or if it is FR, it's free. So those kind of errors. Then sequencing, same, like if it's a spelling with the same letters, it's just the orientation. So who becomes how becomes who, on for no, like that kind of errors. And then omissions and insertions, like we omit certain alphabets and we add certain alphabets, and how they change the meaning of the word. So these are the typical errors that you will see in a lot of their writing assignments, or you will see as samples. These are the clues that you will pick it up when you are working with children with learning disability. Now, this is a case study of Rahul. And when Rahul went for his evaluation, they found out father had difficulty in reading himself, which he reported. Medically, he always complained of frequent ear infections, and that's why he was in and out of medicine, medical help. And his preschool history was he had delayed speech with articulation difficulties, articulating various sounds, oral motor difficulties, feeding and all. Now, what was his K1 history? He had difficulty learning sounds, letter sounds, vowel sounds, blending sounds together, rhyming. So if you give a word and say bat and give me the beginning sound, had difficulty in understanding the beginning sound, the ending sounds. This child, when goes to grade 2, still continues to have articulation errors and say aminal for animal, inaccurate word recognitions, lot of guesswork, reads very slowly, is a choppy reader. Verbal skills are little better than his reading and writing skills. Usually you will see a pattern with children with learning difficulty will have like they will be very good orators. You give them any topic to talk about, they'll talk about. But when you give them reading or writing samples is where you see they'll become little reluctant. So this was about Rahul. Now the teacher identifies in class and kind of works along towards the so when we say grade 1, grade 2, this is the time when children are learning to read, and then they kind of transition from grade 4 to 5, and then middle to high school is the time when they read to learn. So that's where their textual textbooks comes into picture, where they have to make meaning out of their textual information. They have to use their content to answer question answers, to solve worksheets, complete their classworks, homeworks. So it was harder to guess vocabulary. So contextual clues was becoming very difficult. The volume of the text was going little high. It looks like that he was a reluctant writer. Short and choppy sentences. So instead of completing the sentence, there were a lot of usage of phrases. The writing was illegible. Sometimes, I'm not saying most of the time, sometimes these kids use handwriting as their defense mechanism. So when they have an illegible handwriting, the teacher, or the parent keep on guessing, oh, I think the initial letter is C, maybe he wanted to write or she wanted to write this. So, and then missing articles, pronouns, and prepositions. So that how it was in grade 4. Now, at this point, usually as parents and teachers, we would like to intervene and find out what the difficulty is, because now the child is going to grade 4, going to 5, and then middle school is the time when, if we find out the child has difficulty, is the time when we apply to different boards to seek accommodations. We'll be talking about accommodations in a while, but when the teacher identified that there was a difficulty, or at home you looked for patterns, this was the intervention that was given to Rahul. So it was a structured small group, so that it was more of like couple of kids together. And then there was, the main focus was on phonics. When we say phonics, it is the ability to blend and to put sounds to the alphabets. Accommodations were given for spelling and writing. That means the child was not penalized for making spelling errors and was given little less demand on writing. Assistive technology was introduced by parents. So they were given a lot of, there are e-readers, there were note makings, there were different tools which were there. And make sure that child learns about what dyslexia is, and he has full control about, and he knows that how his brain works, and take it to use it and use it as his advantage, and know what the thing is, and the child is in control. What was the result? Rahul frustration in reading and spelling and writing were reduced, because one, they were accommodations. Number two, he knew that he will not be penalized. Number three, he knew that my parents and teachers are there to support me. And because I learned differently, there was a lot of buy-in. So there was not pushback, that there was no reluctance of accepting the intervention, or, working towards the intervention. He was a very happy child to receive intervention and work. As Rahul goes to middle school, his slow rate of reading, you continue to, so it's not something that goes away with 1 year or 2 year of intervention, but it needs lot of work to see success. So when we say work, we are talking about building skills, and these are the foundational skills. So these are not other, as like, if I have to name few skills, would be say decoding, comprehending, skimming, scanning, identifying keywords. So these are like building blocks. So in middle school, he still finds it difficult. He still can't cope up the way the class is moving, at the speed which the class is moving, overwhelmed with multiple assignments. And usually in middle school, the subjects also get divided. So science get further bifurcated into physics, chemistry, and bio. So there are different textbooks, multiple adults working with the children. There are multiple assignments that the child has to keep track of. And usually children have organizational difficulties also. There were residual errors in spelling. Writing still continues to be one of his difficult areas. And the intervention continues. But if you look at the success, this is a true story. We have seen Rahul. We have worked with Rahul. Rahul graduated from high school with good results. When I say good result, it was a 8.5 CGPA. He was very loved, very liked and loved by all his teachers and peers. He did very well in sports. He was the sports captain of the school. He used all the accommodations with a lot of pride and worked towards it throughout his college and school years. And he understands and speak about dyslexia very openly, and talks about how what support he got, the skills that were worked on, how it helped him, and he becomes one of our champions in spreading the awareness against dyslexia. So this was story about Rahul, to give you that it's not something that goes away with 1 or 2 years of work, but it's a continuous journey. Now, this is where we are, and where we are there for you is to buckle up. Step one, rule out as parents that it is something to do with vision. The eyesight is fine, hearing is fine, so that we know that it's not something related to the processing. So when I say and it doesn't get processed, and that's why it's showing up as difficulty. Or so there was, I would like to give an anecdote here. There was one of my friend's daughter. She is like voracious reader. She would pick up books, read books after books, and one fine day she was finding it very difficult. And every time she's reading, she's like, her reading went slow. Whenever we used to talk, I was like, so what are you reading currently? No, auntie, I'm not able to read much. Somehow I get a headache and this thing. And when they found out she had astigmatism, so, and when we got the correction and she got her glasses, and she said, the world looks so much better now. I'm so glad I found it. It makes so much more meaning to see words like this. So first step one is to rule out if there is any physiological difficulties. Step two, get your child reading support from school or an independent special educator, or if you have time yourself, and give that initial support. And when we say support, it could be a read aloud, it could be a discussion that you can engage with. Pick up simple sight words which are easily available. Simple sentence words like is, on, the, give them sentence starters. So see if that kind of help works. Then there are a lot of first generation learners for whom, language acquisition, learning language is a first experience. So you can work with them, give them that initial exposure to reading, and rule out that it's not something more than that. And our focus for today is, how do you engage with children with learning difficulty, specifically to dyslexia, and intervene. So first is you get into read to child with discussion. Now, this is something, whenever we plan a support program, we always say there should be a very extensive home support. And this is one thing we usually tell parents, that there should be at least 10 to 15 minutes of read aloud that happens with the child. And not just a read aloud, but a discussion. Now, why is that discussion important? Because when we work, these discussions help children to develop their background knowledge. Now, when we work with writing topics and tell children to pick up topics, they are very reluctant to pick a topic. Now, so after a lot of probing, we kind of find out either they don't have adequate information and that's why they don't want to speak up. Sometimes it's like what the other child will think of. So there are a lot of things, or their own mindset around it. So when you have these kind of discussions, when you pick up the books that children like, it helps them in developing their background knowledge, make the connections. So making connections to the outer world, which is very important. So having read aloud, consistent read aloud every day for 20 minutes is something which is like must. Have your child read to a pet or a stuffed toy. So many times we tell our kids, being a teacher is the best way to learn. So either pick up a topic, pick up a book, read to a pet. If parents are not available, stand in the front of the mirror. Sometimes you just take a phone, just audio record, take any device, record yourself, listen to yourself, and see how it sing. Using e-readers and audiobooks, it can be Kindle. There is access to, there are a lot of apps. There is a Bolo app. There is quite a bit of audio books which are there, can be available in the school library as well as library outside. Switch captions on TV or OTT so that children have exposure to print. And when we say exposure to print, it's all kind of print. Use apps that provide access to books. So when we say exposure to the print, so it's not only, your textbooks or your storybooks, but it could be billboards, it could be menu, it could be advertisements, it could be newspaper, it could be magazines, any. So as much as we can expose children to how the words look like, how they can look at the print around them. Then comes, so once you get children this is something we really love doing with kids, and they love this activity of I pick. So when you give them when you teach them that what does I means I select a book. So I pick is a strategy which allows children to pick book at their good fit level. So when we say good fit, if I open the book, the child should be able to manage 50 to 60% of the book all by himself or herself without support. So we start with initially allowing them to pick up books. So they'll come up with age appropriate books, which might be at a difficult level. But over the period of time, when we go along and go with this I pick strategy, so I stand for I select a book. P is purpose. So what is my purpose? Am I reading it for information? Am I reading it for recreation? Am I reading it for pleasure? Am I reading it because I want to gain more information about particular topic, or is it my interest? I is your interest. So if I'm interested in sports, I'm interested in cooking, I'm interested in travel, I'm interested in animal life. C is your comprehend. So how much can I understand, or what do I understand when I'm reading? So how much can I make meaning out of it? So there might be kids at grade 3 who would be reading at grade what level, because that's their grade book. So over the period of time when we practice I pick, they eventually start picking up books which is at their good fit level. And K is how many words I know. So that's what I was saying. When you open the book, they should be able to read 50 to 60% of the words at their independent level. So it's a beautiful program called Daily 5. And one of the strategy, one of their anchor charts is on how you teach children to have IPIC. And
Bal, can I jump in here for a minute?
Yeah.
So the whole point, guys, of doing this is for children to pick up books on their own when we are not there. We can't be there for every book, even as a teacher or a parent. And we know that neuroplasticity, it only works when there's enough repetition. So that's why we get into this and kind of help them pick a book that they can then sustain and read by themselves. So that's the whole reason for this strategy.
Yeah, and a lot of times when we allow children to pick books, and the books that they pick up is not at their good fit level, you'll see most of the time they'll be flipping the pages, and within 2 minutes they'll be saying, I'm done. So over the period of time, when you teach them, and make them independent to pick up their books, you will see their engagement with the book also goes up. So IPIC is it really works out both at a school level and at class at home level if you allow children to be a little bit more independent in picking up books. And you will see that this interest continues if you take them to a bookshop or you go outside somewhere. They'll start picking up books of their interest. They'll start opening and flipping the books to see, can I read it? How much can I comprehend it? You'll start seeing those things. These will be your clues that the child is now at the independent level to pick up the books. And that's where your bind can also come in. Now, this is something that really works. We have tried in all the spaces. We've been working with this for quite some time, is your language triangle. And when I say triangle, it's not only about reading and writing, because we think if we give them enough of reading practice and enough of writing practice, children will get better. Rote or memory or just practice will help them overcome it. But the triangle, if you look at it, is your modalities, that how many different ways can I present the same information? Minimum should be 3 or 2. So when I'm teaching a child a concept, so when I'm talking is one modality. When the child is listening is your second auditory. The third could be if you are giving anything to feel, could be tactile. When the child is writing is also using a muscle memory. If the child is doing tracing, if the child is feeling sensory. So you have to see whenever you present information, most of the times, it should have 2 or 3 modalities in which you give instructions. So we know that in middle and high school, children need to write, but the focus need not be always on writing to start with. So the same thing, like I gave you an example that when we broke the task and we gave that chain and he made the chain and we achieved the purpose, is the modalities that we are talking about. You can have multiplication table said out loud with a small dance move, hopscotch with science definitions, hopscotch with alphabets, drama in your kinesthetic, drama using movement, any of the concepts that can be learned. Help children figure out their learning style. We'll do it in a while and you can try it out with all children. It will help you understand how your child learns the best, what kind of a learner your child is. So whether your child is an auditory learner, your child is a visual learner, When I say kinesthetic means my child learns best with movements. So what kind of a learner my child is will help me to present my material, present my content to help the child. Teach study skills. We've done this workshop last week, which talked about a lot of study skills techniques, which is available on our YouTube channel. It's on our website. You can go and have a look at it. You can explore it. And we also do summer workshops for children to work on study skills. Provide them with graphic organizers. The whole idea of using graphic organizers is, again, building these language triangles for children, giving them different ways to present the information and breaking down of information. So the more achievable, the more chunkable you'll make it, you will have an easy bind. The child will be more comfortable to come to the table to work with. Then comes as what kind of a learner you are. So if you would like to take this activity for yourself and see how it will translate, so these are your 24 questions. So you give children a range of, say, on a scale of 1 to 5, what would you rate yourself as 5 and 4 max? And then you see, and then help children. So what do you enjoy and not really? So give them a scale, because sometimes they like it, but they don't know. So they might kind of confuse themselves here. So give them a scale. On a scale of 1 to 5, what would you rate as 5, 4, 3? And that will be your top 3 modalities that your child works the best with. So take a 1 minute pause and go through the questions. If any of the questions you want to ask or need more clarity, as in what kind of activities you can watch these kids out and then help them get this rating, will also be something we can talk about. So
usually it also works for you to give it to the
yes,
child, and then for you to do it for the child as well.
yeah,
Because some things like daydreaming,
you
they will go
understand.
better
Yeah.
because it's coming from inside.
Mhm.
But something like figuring out how things work, you will know because you're buying the toys that they are demolishing. So, just figure out. And again, like Parul said, we are only looking at the 5 and 4s. If
Yeah.
it's, yeah, I do it also, then it's not an enjoy. So
Mhm.
if you just, what you will have to do is just add all your enjoys, and that will tell you that these are strong areas that you are going to learn with.
So the apps you pick, the activities that you plan, the experiences that you plan for the child, the information that you can share with the teacher will be helpful if you know what kind of a learner my child is. And you can also help the child to identify himself or herself as in what works best for me. So hunting, camping, hiking, a lot of children ask us, ma'am, hunting. So so we usually tell them that means outdoor activities. If you have to go to nature, would you be interested in taking up those activities versus going to a mall and doing an indoor play area? So that those are the kind of adaptations that you might have to give them examples. Daydreaming, usually they don't understand, but when you say, if you are listening to a lecture, if you are sitting in a classroom, you are looking at the teacher but you are somewhere else, does that happen to you often? So you will have to maybe give them those lead questions, but ideally it would be nice if you practice once on yourself and then you can help children to take this tool.
While you guys are doing this, one story I learned from Piyush Pandey, ad guru,
Guru, yeah.
that he would just sit and build all these scenarios and stories and imagine in class. He is dyslexic and he speaks about it now. And he says, now look, I do very, very successfully for this. Obviously, he got into trouble uh, because a lot of his teachers didn't understand or were not, able to kind of let him give that space. Now, when you think from a school or a teacher standpoint, their pressures are to make sure this child is going to pass an exam. So that is where that whole, what shall we say, tussle comes between letting a child be and figuring it out. But also it has to be done on a specific timeline with a specific format. And there's this exam that's looming as well. Hopefully with the new national education policy, the board 10 exam is going to go away and there's going to be a little more flexibility. But as of now, we have no clear idea as to how things are going to be.
Yeah. Because the new NEP also talks about your skills and skill development. And when those skills come and you work with skills and you strengthen the skills, hopefully it should help children to cope up as well.
Okay, shall we move on? Because if anyone is
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
this, have you
For
had
question.
enough time?
Yeah. You can give us a thumbs up if you can go ahead. May I ask a question?
Hi, I have a question.
Yes.
Will you be sharing this with us? And could you also tell us if these are the services, what kind of services you provide as an institute, etc.? That'll really be helpful.
Sure.
This webinar will be recorded and it will be put up on our YouTube channel for anyone to look at. So that sharing the entire slide deck you will have like that. We will talk about it towards the end. We'll definitely talk about what we do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I have a question, may I ask?
Yes, Anima.
See, you told that when we see the English alphabets, how a child will feel. But what about seeing Hindi alphabets and other local languages?
It's when we talk about dyslexia, it's not about only English, it's about any language, the alphabets. It's the what do we say, the mechanic part of it, the presentation of these alphabets. So we don't say dyslexia is only for English. It could be for Spanish, it could be for French, it could be for Hindi, Kannada. So the difficulty of blending, the phonological difficulties, the difficulty of putting sounds together is something which will impact all their language acquisition skills.
Okay.
If you
Yeah.
really think about it, a language is just a code, right?
Yeah.
Who connected and said that an A needs to look like a A? It's basically, we've given it a code and now we're helping children decipher it. The only difference is everyone knows this code. There is no, crypticness about it. But for children whose brains don't work like that, this will be a problem in any language. This is also why one of the accommodations boards give is dropping of a second language. And a lot
third language.
Yeah, and a lot of parents will be given advice by, especially for autism and to a lesser degree for dyslexia. They'll say that don't put the pressure in terms of several languages.
Yeah.
With autism and stuff, it's like, don't even teach, only work with English. But here, because the verbal comprehension is different from, their verbal comprehension is different from their reading and writing comprehension, we don't have to worry too much about exposing them to languages. We just worry about not putting pressure in terms of expressing themselves through different languages.
Yeah.
If
And
I have
also,
if I have to do English, Kannada and Hindi, every script is different. So it's a lot of pressure on a child.
Yeah, and why we pick English for remediation is also because English is one language which fits in for most of the subjects. So if I have to study science, if I have to study math, or I have to do social science, English is something which will, if I learn to crack that code, then it will help me across all the subjects, because board allows you to drop two subjects, two languages. So English is the one language that is usually picked for remediation.
Okay, understood.
Yeah. So this is something where we always see a 50-50 buy-in when parents think that assistive technology, that means we are making them too much dependent on gadgets again. But if you look at it, so at school, there is limited usage of assistive technology in terms of using digital media, because there is a lot of pen and paper kind of remediation, and a lot of that kind of structured intervention happens. So for child and parents to try something at home, which is different, is helpful. So if you look at it, as we said, dyslexia is not only difficulty in reading, spelling, and on working memory or putting things together. It's also about organization. So any kind of physical calendars, to-do list, schedules which are available will be helpful. There is one of the organization planner which is available on our website, to free to download. You can take it from there. It can be customized according to the need of the child. Then there is also note making apps. Now, why note making is or sketch noting an effective strategy? It helps children to use. So when we say, is teaching learning an active process or a passive process? Most of the time when children are listening to their teachers speak is a lot of passive activity, and children with learning disabilities struggle to stay focused. So the minute you change the modality from passive to active, and you give them tools like highlighting or underlining, circling, picking up the keywords, writing down some examples which are not very obvious, helps them to engage actively with their teachers, actively with their text. Mind mapping is another great tool. There is an app which is called Mind Map. Now, again, you can start off children by using digital and then, do like a combination. You give them a template and then they can build on a template. There are some text to speech and speech to text softwares which are available to attempt reading, writing, understanding meanings of the word which are difficult, how that word can be used in different contexts, how does the presentation of that word looks like, and font. Now, there is again, say, something called dyslexic font. So sans family is an easiest and closest for a child to make meaning out of in terms of presentation. Yeah, in Microsoft Word, font we are talking about is sans. So try that out when you are presenting a content or a mentor text. It will help. Anima, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I wanted to say that this speech to text, text to speech, or speech to text is there in Microsoft Word.
Word.
So you can read aloud as well as you can dictate.
Yes. So a lot of kids, boards which give accommodations to children, this is a tool which is used for taking tests.
Also, this snap type is a really good one where you take a picture of whatever is the worksheet and then it converts it into a writable space. So you can just then tap on the screen and then type in what you need. Obviously, some of these things, school has to be with you to do it. And this is something that as parents, I think we need to fight for. The balance here is to make sure that nothing is all technology or all writing. We want a nice balance. So they're doing a lot of writing and working towards, again, there is this board exam, there is something that you have to write. So we can't let go of writing completely. But can we use the technology to build tools on the side so that the writing alone doesn't become like our objectives have to be very clear.
Yeah.
With technology, I'm able to help the child express, practice, and get more confident. With the writing, then the child will be able to use that opportunity even better. It's not again one or the other. What we have found is to stop being Puritan about it. Like a lot of people have issues with e-readers. Oh, they're only going to do Kindle, they can't do this, they can't do that. Well, there are certain skills that are better done. For example, with the Kindle, they've found that deep reading doesn't happen as much. But nobody's saying that that will be the only way that we will do it. Somewhere, if we pull away the medium from reading is reading, even if I'm reading a sign, like if I want to know where I am, I read around, look at a shop and I say, oh, I'm at Chamrajpet, right? So that is also reading. But there we don't worry so much. But when it comes to technology, there's a lot of pushback. So if we can keep it very clear as to why we're doing what we're doing, would be very useful.
Yeah. Sunny, we'll finish and come back to demo, or we finish the demo and then come back?
It's only 2 minutes, Paru.
Yeah, sure. Let's finish it.
So this, guys, is a extension. It's a free extension to Google Chrome as a browser. So you don't necessarily need anything to pay for or expensive.
Download. Yeah.
You just download it, use it as an extension. And we wanted to show how easy this is going to be
for a child. Sunny, there's no audio.
Purple read and write icon at the... Hi there. Today we're going to see how read and write can help when you're using Google Docs or just browsing the internet. Okay, let's start by seeing what we can do in Google Docs. Here's the purple read and write icon at the top of your screen. Click on it and this toolbar appears. First of all, let's read some text out loud. Put the cursor anywhere you want. Click play and it starts reading like this.
Honey is a kind of sugary syrup.
And you can stop at any time. Pick a word, like this, and use the dictionary to explain what it means. And there's a picture dictionary right here too. Click on the prediction icon, and read and write will help you by guessing words that you're typing. Put your mouse over the suggested word to hear it read aloud.
Insects.
If that's the word you're looking for, click to insert it. Click here near the right of the toolbar to change settings if you want to. There are lots of different reading voices to choose from. And you can change reading speed if it's too fast or slow. You can hide the toolbar anytime you don't need it by clicking on the Read and Write icon again. Okay, Read and Write isn't just for Google Docs. You can use it when you're browsing web pages with Google Chrome too. Click the Read and Write logo in the address bar, right here, and the toolbar pops up. Most features are pretty similar to when you're using Google Docs. With reading aloud, this time you can hover over to hear the text.
I had a chance to talk to the show's creator.
You can stop reading anytime. The dictionary lets you look up what words mean and hear the definitions read aloud. Double-click to highlight a word and press the dictionary button to see what it means. Click on the dictionary to listen to it.
Adjective, having life or vigor or spirit.
And of course, there's the picture dictionary too. Double-click to highlight a word, then click right here to see images related to the word you've selected. This fact finder is really useful if you're doing homework or researching an assignment. Highlight a word and click here to see search results from Google. Thanks for watching.
So as you can see, this kind of takes away a lot of barriers for children in terms of acquiring background knowledge.
And then we come into the accommodations part of it. Now, if it looks like a very big word, but it's a very powerful word in child's life, as when we talk about rights, these are the rights of children, if you look at it. And it's a scaffolding, it's like a ladder. So it's not the privilege, or these children are not different, that, oh, they are getting this help, that's why they are doing well. This is the right scaffolding that we can give these children to cope up with their learning difficulty. In the classroom, how it looks like is when children can get word banks, copies of notes. Now, as parents, you should be flexible to go and photocopy notes from other children's work and help children complete these notes at their pace. You can also request teachers to, scribe if at all it is required, just the questions part of it. Study guides, if there is any, a good reference book that they can refer, which is a little bit more simpler, more pictorial, so that it helps them to learn a little bit more in a different modality. Graphic organizers as tools. So, when children use fill in the, mind maps, when they use flow charts, they use concept charts, books and technologies, and can they be written, sent, typed or written assignments versus a written assignment. In exams, now this up to grade 5, most of the schools are expected to pick whatever they can or whatever accommodation they can provide for these kids. Once the child goes from grade 5 to grade 6, the transition from your primary to middle is when you start. Now the child would have ideally gone through 3 to 4 years of intervention. And when we realize that if we drop language, or if we give extra time, or if we give scribe, these children can cope up as per the grade, is when we start collecting the database, is the time when we start the paperwork to give these boards request to seek exemptions. When we talk about what are these exemptions, it could be extra time, it could be scribe, it could be read aloud of question papers, which is at school, but it's not, none of the board give you that option till now. Visuals in question papers, technology to take exams. It is also sometimes dropping languages, your second language and third language, and opt for something which is more practical based subjects instead of taking a language. And of course, there are 4 major boards, which is CBSE, IGCSE, ICSE, IB, and state. And each board more or less has, range of accommodations that they provide for children with learning difficulties. Like use of calculators is also something CBSE has just recently added to their list of accommodations for children who have dyscalculia as part of their learning difficulty.
And these board specific exemptions usually come after like end of grade 8, beginning of grade 9.
Yeah.
And if we're going to assume that they will get it is something, so suppose you've been working with them and you can show a couple of assessments in time. So you can say, all right, in grade 4, this child was assessed. This intervention was done. Then we assessed again at the end of grade 7. On the basis of this, we are asking for these accommodations. You're more likely to get it because the boards want to see that it's a genuine case and enough work has been done. And it's not like suddenly we realize, because with everything else, there is also all kinds of jugaad happening with systems. So we want to make sure that children who require it get it. So
And
that's
sometimes schools also push that we will send it at grade 8, grade 9. But ideally, the paperwork should start from grade 6. The child gets exemption. So those times are used for working on the core subjects. And by 8th standard, it should be applied. And you should get permission for exemption in both grade 9 as well as 10. And then you again send it in 10 for seeking exemption for 11th and 12th.
There is also after that the disability certificate. If you're going to get that, then there is accommodations for entrance exams as well.
Yes.
And this takes them all through to college and
university. Yeah.
The one thing we do want to say here is on the mark sheet, there is nowhere that it says that this child did it with accommodations.
Yeah.
So no one needs to worry. Yeah. And the reason we're saying this is I don't think anyone should worry in the first place, but there is a lot of stigma. And if you want to not get into that side, it's not going to show up in the mark sheets. Any questions you have? We're kind of there in terms of what we do. Pal, you want to talk about our programs then?
Yeah, so usually we have programs twice in a year. One is in the summer and one is during the Dashra Diwali break. That's the time when children have a little longer break and they would have finished one term at school. So they will exactly know where their struggles are and they are more open in terms of accepting, any kind of intervention. So we usually work in the areas of study skills. And when we say study skills, we split into a 5-day workshop. So we teach them SQ3R, which is one of the techniques of how do you survey a textbook, what are the different ways in which you question your text. When you question your text, you make the text very active and engaging for yourself. How do you read, how do you recite, and how do you do review? So these are the strategies which children usually use before they begin a new chapter so that they are at least at par with or anticipating what is coming up for them. So this is one of the study skill strategy. The other skills we work on is visual notes. When we say visual notes, it is out of making notes, taking notes in classrooms, using sketch notes, interactive notebooks. All these are active ways of engaging. So a lot of time when we ask children the STEM, when you sit down to study, what comes to your mind? Most of the kids say we bored, we don't know what to do. Mama says do this. Sometimes there is a homework. So that's how their study routine looks like. So just to engage them more meaningfully with the text, these skills come in very handy. We also work a lot of in the areas of organization and goal setting to help children identify what to work towards. So we work in terms of long-term and short-term goals, both in the areas of academic and co-curriculars, and how do they work towards it, make it more realistic and measurable. And then we have a 2-day workshop on writing, where we don't worry too much about how writing looks like, but we worry on the basic template. If they know those skills that goes into writing would fit into any style of writing, whether you're writing for information, you're doing letter, article, editing, diary, whatever, it fits in well there because we work with the fundamentals or the foundation of how any writing should be approached. So that's ideally how our 5-day workshops look like. We also do on-demand small groups. So if we have a small group of 5 to 6 kids, we usually don't go larger in groups beyond 6 or 7 because we think 6 to 7 is a good group to kind of individualize if we have to. And they have, they can easily openly ask questions. We can, kind of customize it to an extent. So if there are 4 to 5 kids, we are also ready to work with them as part of small groups.
So sometimes in this age group of middle and high schoolers, a group helps versus one-on-one.
One-on-one,
Parents
yeah.
think one-on-one works better, but it always helps them to see their peers asking the same kind of questions and for things to get a little more normalized. To say everyone's learning this and I'm just learning something. It's not something my
Different.
parents are putting me through or making me do. Because with middle school and older, puberty hits, and it's very natural for children to push back and resist everything. For some of our kids, that started at the second year of life, and for some others, it starts a little later, seems to be the only difference. All
So
right. We
all
will
our information, usually we post all our information on our social media, on our website. You can look out for these. Usually we'll do it in the month of July, May, June, July, and then October and November.